forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack making backflip. Telly Hank did with the action. With the vital speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews, how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby May. Just caught a touchdown from the bay.
All right, now to Queens. Police are looking into a hit-and-run crash that led them to a disturbing discovery. Officers say last night's crash in Flushing led them to find a man shot in the head in one of the vehicles.
An amateur Bridgeport historian released a new book today about the JFK assassination.
Eyewitness accounts that have never been heard by the Warren Commission.
Myron Dukes telling us the self-published volume is called JFK Assassination Eyewitnesses Speak Together 1963 2nd edition. He says Kennedy's death led to a string of assassinations and emboldened people with racist ideologies.
After President Kennedy was assassinated, they became even bolder. They assassinated Malcolm X, then Dr. Martin Luther King, and then Robert F. Kennedy. So it was like a 5-year span where like evil was just prevalent and it was allowed to just, you know, quiet men because of their voices.
The book is available on Amazon and some other major platforms.
What seemed like a regular traffic incident investigation of a hit and run quickly took a turn when police realized there was a body in the backseat of one of the vehicles with a gunshot wound to the head. At this point in time, we know a white van and a black Range Rover hit head on. And at this point in time, we know this happened at Sanford Avenue and Parsons Boulevard in Flushing. The driver of the Range Rover ran away while the driver of the white van called 911. When police realized that there was a person in the back of the Range Rover with a gunshot to their head, they immediately called the homicide team. The driver of the van is expected to be okay, but the victim has been identified as 48-year-old Myron Dukes. He was taken to the hospital and pronounced dead, but right now they're just trying to figure out when he was shot and why he was shot and find the driver of the black Range Rover who ran away. Reporting in Flushing, Queens, Romney Smith, News 4 New York.
Police responded to a crash in Flushing only to find a man who'd been shot in the head in the backseat of an SUV. A lot of unanswered questions this morning as police search for the driver who simply ran off. Eyewitness News reporter Crystal Cranmore is live in Flushing with the latest on this investigation. Crystal?
Good morning, Ken. Police are still here at the scene trying to make sense of all of this, blocking off a portion of Parsons Boulevard and Franklin Avenue. That's where they say they found that man dead inside that vehicle. We're learning new details as to who that man is. Police say that man is identified as 48-year-old Myron Dukes from Bridgeport. Police were called out to the scene around 4:15 Wednesday afternoon. A black Range Rover heading north on Parsons Boulevard in Flushing hit a white van facing southbound. It was stopped at a red light near Franklin. Now, eyewitnesses tell us that the driver of the Range Rover got out and ran off. Now, after police officers got to the scene, they found Dukes unresponsive in the back seat of that SUV. He was taken to the hospital where medics pronounced him dead. Now, eyewitnesses described what they saw.
Unfortunately, I saw a gentleman or the suspect running around the white van, and he was carrying a large bag. He looked like he was scared, and he did something. To see something like this going on around here is unheard of.
Now, it's unclear when Dukes was shot or who might have been responsible. We do know that he has a prior 1992 arrest for attempted murder in Manhattan. As far as the driver of that white van, he was also taken to the hospital in stable condition. So far, no arrests. The investigation is ongoing.
Yo, we back. It's Shay's Popalot. MOBB. We on our way to Bridgeport, Connecticut with it. But we gonna shoot up to Washington Heights, get busy up there. But then we gonna have to spend some time in Rikers Island due to our discretions. Now today, I'm gonna be bringing you guys the story of a guy by the name of Myron Dukes, or Chy-Dukes, as he is often referred to as. Now, if y'all tuned in from Bridgeport, we definitely need y'all in the comment box. If y'all spent time on the island, or even Clinton Correctional Facility, from the early 90s to the late 2010s. That name might sound familiar to you guys, and I'm going to need y'all in the comment box for this one. Now, Chy-Dukes, who hails from the grisly city of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and if y'all don't know about Bridgeport, Connecticut, that shit is off the chain. The gunplay is heavily out there, and Chy-Dukes will find that out at a very early age when on Valentine's Day of 1992, he would become a victim of gun violence himself while losing a close friend by the name of Pint in the process. Now, doing the research, I want to be the first one to admit that it looked like Chy-Dukes had a pretty rough life, as he was somewhat mentioned himself on an Instagram post from February 17th of this year, directed at Mano, Fat Joe, Jim Jones, Myron, as well as others, where he would go on to say that he got sent to Rikers Island, C-74, over 20 times in 20 years and was only fighting one case the whole time. Also going on to say, they call me Chai Nails, the Connecticut predicate. Now, I'm not going to get into what goes on behind bars, as I feel when you get back there, you got to do what you got to do anyway. So we don't really get into those stories too deep. But if you was there and had eyes on the situation, we definitely need your perspective in the comment box. But what I will talk about is the situation that landed Chy-Dukes there, as well as his death that would ultimately occur in Queens on a street in Flushing. Now, we talked about Chy-Dukes being shot. I'm not sure if that's evidence of the company that he would keep or if it's just how the city of Bridgeport play, as both options seem likely. But it would be a robbery plot concocted at a pizza shop in Connecticut in February of 1992 that will ultimately lead to Chy-Dukes serving 25 years behind bars. Now, according to the government, Chy-Dukes, along with two other teenage friends, a guy by the name of Taj Myers, who they describe as a street corner crack dealer, as well as Myers' school friend by the name of Jason Williams, it would go on to be said that the three would go on to hatch their scheme at a Bridgeport pizzeria on February 6th of 1992. Now, according to testimony from Jason Williams, he would say that Taj would come into the pizza place and he would explain to them that they were going to New York to do a robbery. The plan would be to go to the Washington Heights section of Manhattan on Amsterdam Avenue, where they would use a .380 handgun that belonged to Taj Myers to rob drug dealers. Now, after only planning this scheme for about a day, let's just say that it didn't go as planned, as their original plan called for the use of two guns, but it ended up being a situation where Chy-Dukes couldn't get access to a gun that he thought he was going to have. Based on Williams' testimony, it seemed like the other two teenagers were skeptical. Ultimately, Chy-Dukes would convince them, and they would head for New York in his white Audi. Now, after arriving in New York, the plan would totally change due to them having one gun, and Williams would testify that Taj Myers and Chy-Dukes would pose as interested buyers, and they would essentially go up to an apartment where drugs were sold. While inside the apartment, Taj Myers would go on to shoot and kill a drug dealer by the name of Elvis Cruz. Now, during the scuffle of the shootout, it was said that one of the dealers would throw a kilogram package of cocaine outside of the window, where almost simultaneously, Chy-Dukes would take the gun that Myers was using and throw it into the backyard, where it would go on to later be found by the police. Now, amidst the chaos, Chy-Dukes and Taj Myers would try to escape out of a bathroom window and onto a fireplace, where shots would ring out, and one of the shots would end up hitting Taj Myers in the head, essentially killing him. Now, if y'all keeping score, that's two bodies. Now, it said that Chy-Dukes would luckily make it to the car where Williams would be waiting, and he would go on to explain that he thought that Taj Myers was dead, and they would flee the scene in the Audi as the drug dealers and police would give chase. According to court documents, they would end up abandoning the white Audi on 160th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam Avenue, leading Chy-Dukes to pawn a chain that he had been wearing for $15 just to pay for train tickets to get back to Connecticut. They would arrive back in Connecticut at about 6 p.m. that same day, where the pair would try to explain essentially what happened to Taj Myers' brother Demetrius, as well as his cousin. Fearing the worst for her cousin, she would begin to call New York City hospitals trying to check to see if they had a patient by the name of Taj Myers. Next, she would go on to call the New York City Police Department, where she would explain to a detective that her cousin, as well as some friends, had took a trip to New York to go school shopping, explaining that the friends had returned to Connecticut, saying that her cousin had fell and was left unconscious, and some guys would try to rob them. Already knowing the real reason for the trip to New York, she would try to keep that secret to try to keep the boys from getting in any deeper trouble. Now, that very same evening, the mother of Taj Myers, as well as the cousin that had known about the plot and contacted police, would take a trip to New York to speak to another police detective. The cousin would go on to identify Taj by photograph, but still not disclose the real reason that the boys had gone to New York. Now, all of that would change in April of 1992, when Taj Myers' cousin would be arrested on an unrelated drug charge. She would remain in prison for another 9 months before January of 1993, about 11 months after the initial shootout. And it would be at that time where she would inform that her cousin and his friends had gone into New York to commit the robbery of those drug dealers. And that's what would essentially lead to Chy-Dukes serving that 25 years behind bars. He would go on to write a book about the JFK assassinations. Now, I'm not sure if that was a hobby or a hustle, but you would think that that sounds like a story with a happy ending until a few days ago. Because on Thursday, November 10th, 2022, ABC 7 would go on to report police had found a 48-year-old Bridgeport man who had been fatally shot in the backseat of a Range Rover. What initially looked like a car crash would turn out to be a homicide scene, with the victim being Myron Chy-Dukes Duke. Now, with dying at the age of 48, he would actually serve more time behind bars, 25 years, than he did in the free world, 23 years. If y'all had a chance to cross paths with Chy-Dukes, y'all get in the comment box. Y'all make sure y'all follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, POP_A_LOT. Y'all hit the red subscribe right under this video so y'all know when this real trill spill shit is dropping. And y'all know what it is with me, man. Y'all let me know what cities we need to go to, what stories we missed, what gangsters we haven't covered. Shout out to my guy Zoom Man X for bringing this to my attention. We gonna be back with some more